We're real progressives. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Today is a wonderful day to remember the struggle that the African American community and, quite frankly, the United States went through to try and bring about equality to our nation. Our nation has been divided for many, many, many years, and that division is even more pronounced today. So on this wonderful day, this opportunity to look back and also, more importantly, look forward. This is our opportunity to look forward and find out how we can capitalize on a more just, a more fair, a more equitable society. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce one of my all-time favorite economists, one of the best people in the world at describing the federal job guarantee. I'm going to bring you on with Pavlina Tcherneva. Pavlina, welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve. Good to be on.
So let me ask you, Pavlina, what is it that got you involved in economics? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, I started, just like most people, I started because I was inspired by a professor. And my professor was Matt Forstater. I don't think you've had him on the show yet, but he has actually written probably the best piece on Martin Luther King and the job guarantee and the March for Jobs and Freedom, and how MLK was a strong advocate for economic social justice, the Economic Bill of Rights. So, I started as an economist because of Matt Forstater, but in my college days, I met Warren Mosler, who you have had on the show, and I was introduced to some of the ideas of soft currency economics, or what we know today as modern money. So I became Warren's first researcher. And then from then, things changed dramatically, as I'm sure it is for many people who first hear about modern money. So I was really determined to just pursue my education. I met Randy Wray along the way. I worked at the Levy Economics Institute. So somehow things merged. There was a happy coincidence of circumstances, and I was always in this environment of Minsky, Keynes, and then we brought in the modern money literature and developed it, and that's how I started.
Well, I can tell you right now, we have had the pleasure and also the difficulty of trying to present modern money, modern monetary theory, which is, oh my God, it's a theory. It's just a theory, guys. It's just a theory. And I'm like, guys, that's just a marketing term somebody came up with. It used to be called Mosler economics. If you talk to Ellis will call it macroeconomic reality or currency analysis. Yeah. Tell us, what is modern monetary theory?
The first thing that Warren and I did in almost more than 20 years ago was a conference in Bretton Woods, and the conference was titled A Framework for Macroeconomic Analysis. Our job was to provide the tools for economists to think about big picture problems, to provide an alternative macroeconomic framework for understanding the world around us. So modern monetary theory is a bit of a misnomer because it's not a theory. We are first and foremost interested with appropriately describing the economy, the monetary system, the currency, and then how markets work, labor markets work, etc. And from there, when we provide these unique new insights, then we come up with new unique policy proposals. So we began with a macroeconomic analytic framework that's centered around this idea that governments have unique powers and unique responsibilities to meet social and economic challenges because they have monetary sovereignty. In other words, they don't have the kind of limits to spend the way we do, households, firms, etc. And of course, they have a responsibility to provide for the common good.
So let's talk about the common good. We learned with Joe Firestone on Saturday night the term the public purpose, and you used that the first time I interviewed you. And for many people, that's a term that I guess could be as nebulous or vague as anything else. What is the public purpose when you describe the public purpose? When you're talking about that, what do you mean?
Look, to me, it's very simple. An economy has to provide for all, and it has to provide some very basic things, right? We've got this market system that has produced wealth unlike anything else we have seen in the history of the world. But the system doesn't distribute its wealth, its riches in an even way. And it is a failure. It's just not just an economic failure, it's a moral failure for the richest system, economic system in the world to fail to provide for all. So for me, the public purpose is that, to design public policies that are universal, that are guaranteed, that provide a very minimum basic decent standard of living. And that will include some things that are included in the Economic Bill of Rights, but they would include universal education, universal healthcare. The right to a shelter has to be guaranteed, the right to food, decent food, and the right to a decent, well-paying job. So to me, the public purpose is that, we figure out as a society, what is the minimum standard of life we want to guarantee our citizens, and then we start thinking about the policies that will guarantee this. And I don't think that this is the focus of public policy. It's certainly not the focus of macroeconomics. And so we're trying to change this.
I love it. So let's just take a dip in the pool for a minute. So obviously the job guarantee is the cornerstone, if you will, of modern monetary theory. It's like the lone prescription out there that is it is the key to it. It really is. Full employment is the ultimate goal of any MMT prescription. MMT is an analysis of the way money works in any place. It can describe it anywhere. But in particular, in the US, we talk about 1971 to present as kind of our model for which we gauge this stuff from. Can you explain to our crowd, who has been far more I don't know, that's not the right word, far more exposed to the universal basic income, can you explain to them what the job guarantee is, and then begin to explain why you don't favor a standalone UBI, why you favor a job guarantee or a job guarantee and a UBI combination, which quite frankly, the Minsky group, the Minskys put out a phenomenal paper. I think it was Brad Voracek wrote it. That could be wrong. Maybe it's another one, but it basically said that, UBI and job guarantee are complementary programs, not adversarial ones. Anyway, I sort of set the stage too much there for you, but if you wouldn't mind, tell us about what the job guarantee is and is not.
Okay. All right. So the job guarantee is really a policy. You can think of it as a public policy that completes the safety net. It is a policy that guarantees, number one, a basic human right. Number two, the job guarantee is a missing piece of the safety net, in the sense that as we have conceptualized the welfare state, we have figured out ways to guarantee some basic necessities. Right? When people are missing retirement income, we guarantee retirement income through Social Security. When people are missing shelter, we guarantee some shelter. If people are missing education, we guarantee public education. If we're missing a job, we are not guaranteeing a job. So we are providing training, education, various other things, but we're not guaranteeing what people desire, right? What people need. So it's a employment insurance is one way to think about it. Okay, instead of unemployment insurance, we guarantee a decent paying job for all. But more importantly, the job guarantee is linked to the modern money literature because it has some very unique macroeconomic features. So just for the audience that might not be, for the listeners that might not be too familiar with the modern money currency aspects. Basically, we argue that in this world we have paper currency, right? We have a fiat, we call it a fiat monetary system. Basically, governments are monopoly issuers of a green piece of paper that they issue and spend. But we don't really know what the value of this green pieces of paper is, right? Of these green pieces of paper. We know that governments spend on various things, but we don't quite know what is the value of that currency. And so the job guarantee has this very unique aspect that it links, it connects the expenditure of the currency into the economy to 1 hour of publicly useful labor, right? And so it's an anchor. It is an anchor for the value of the currency. It is always anchored in labor hours. We always know what we are getting for the money that is being emitted into the economy. The other unique feature of the job guarantee is that it is counter-cyclical. And by that, what we mean is that it moves with the drumbeat of the economy. So when the economy enters in a slump, firms start laying off workers. Those workers, of course, are concerned about whether they will be reemployed. They get on unemployment insurance. The families are disrupted. Their spending patterns change, right? So they don't go to the movies. They don't go to the restaurant. Then every unemployed person, in a way, throws another person out of work, right? So you have this kind of contagion effect. Unemployment starts accelerating and accelerating because, of initial sort of boost in unemployment. And what governments do is they attempt to stop this process by, adding stimulus, spending, food stamps, various other expenditures. When the economy recovers, and as we've seen this in this past, expansion, I mean, that was a very slow and long, expansion, we've created very few jobs. So when the economy expands, jobs are created in the private sector, then the government sort of pulls back, retreats, doesn't spend so much on unemployment insurance, on food stamps, etc. So instead of doing it this way, instead of stabilizing the economy in this way, the way we currently do it, we are saying that the job guarantee is the perfect way to stabilize the economy. When Lowe's or when Home Depot lays off 5,000 people, they may or may not get on unemployment insurance, but maybe a bunch of them want to get into a project, a public sector construction project, and then they replace the loss of one job with another job. And that completely transforms the livelihood of a person, right? When you know that on the other end, there is a guaranteed employment opportunity with decent income. And so the job guarantee basically provides that safety net. People who have been laid off by private firms go into the government government funded, but could be locally administered job guarantee. That expands the pool of the job guarantee of workers expands. That provides the stimulus to the economy. And when the private sector has recovered sufficiently and they are looking for new workers or looking to rehire them back, then the job guarantee shrinks and government spending on the program shrinks. And it is the perfect counter-cyclical stabilizer because always know what you're getting for the money. Right? You always know what government is spending is you're getting a job. You're getting something useful that is being produced in the community and the public purpose.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment to talk about this. And Ellis had touched on this a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of walked through this in terms of, hey, my name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a surfer. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a guitar player. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm an activist. Whatever. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a stay-at-home dad. There are ways of redefining what work is. This is not the same thing as a, hey, you're going to work for the man. This isn't just funding capitalism. This is a means of taking away the capitalist ability to punish the workers, basically. This is preventing them from having the ability to basically use starvation and the basic necessities of life against them. Is it not? Or
look, absolutely. Unemployment is used as a threat. Like we want to remove joblessness as a threat to people, right? You don't want the private sector to so-called discipline workers because they can threaten them with they can use the threat of unemployment. And in fact, because we tolerate a lot of unemployment, we tolerate what is it now? It is about 7 million people officially unemployed, but really it's closer to 17 people who are looking for full-time work. So they are ready to compete for your job. So that threat of unemployment is removed because you know that you have another alternative. You have another living wage job standing on the ready. And so the employer can't quite, threaten you with unemployment, certainly not at the low end, where, people are getting sort of the lowest wages, the poverty wages that the private sector works. So pays. So if you're working in a poverty wage private sector work and you've got a living wage public sector work, guess what? The private sector will have to do something to keep that worker. They have to pay more, better. So,
Right.
So it really establishes the labor standard, what we believe is the minimum decent job, that is decent labor conditions, decent wages, decent benefits, and whether that's vacation package, whether it's retirement package, whether it is paid leave, etc. It is the labor standard. Now, you mentioned the basic income guarantee, and I am happy to talk more about the comparisons. I've been a friend of the basic income guarantee since 2000 when I first started talking to the academics. And only recently in the popular press, basic income has become so popular. But, we've got the same goals. We've got the same objectives. We want to get rid of the precarious nature of the labor market, right? We want to make sure that people don't live in poverty. So we have same objectives, but we have different views of how we get there. And there are many different versions of the basic income guarantee, so I want to be careful which one I'm talking about. I am fully on board with the universal child allowance. We should do it today. We should have done it yesterday. Paid family leave. Various other income supports expand, strengthen social security. Disability benefits, etc. But there is this one proposal that is universal, right? Unconditional, provided to all at living level. In other words, $20,000 grant and to anyone, rich or poor, irrespective of whether they work or not. Let's call it $10,000 grant, right? My philosophical, there are a number of problems that I have, but one is a philosophical objection here, that the basic income is motivated by the right sort of arguments, but it only provides access to the system as is structured, right? You get an income, you get a check, and then you have to go and buy the childcare, the education, the healthcare, all these other things that you need. So it is not in and of itself, a check is not transformative of the system that creates the inequities that we want to correct, right? We want to transform, to make the system, the economic system more just. We want to provide decent wages. We want to provide healthcare. We want to provide childcare, environmental care. The basic income in and of itself is not an institution. It's a payment. And so there is this idea that, we're going to get our checks and we will be able finally to participate in the labor market and get affordable care. Well, I can tell you, I get an income and I have difficulty getting affordable childcare. So childcare is already missing for people who have incomes. What suggests that childcare will be there, affordable childcare will be there if we provide the basic income grant? The problem is the economy. The economy doesn't provide the things we need. It's not just the simple absence of income. So what the job guarantee does, it kind of matches the problem with the solution, right? We say, okay, these communities don't have enough childcare. We will provide it through the job guarantee, and we will allow people to participate in the provisioning. So you can think of it as participation income. It allows, and it kind of empowers people to participate in their community in a very structured way, right? You lack adequate, decent food. Here's a community garden. We will organize it. We've seen it. Come and participate in the production of an organic farm, etc. You lack after-school activities for your kid in your particular community. Here's the local library is going to organize them. Not to mention the enormous other things that, problems that we are facing of, environmental problems.
Can I interrupt just for a moment? Absolutely. This is so beautiful to me. So what I want to make sure of and I'm going to take you out of the picture just for a minute, and this is me, not you saying this. What I want you guys to understand is this. We're talking about serving America. We're talking about serving our local communities. We're talking about serving one another and making our lives better. We're not talking about serving the man, so to speak, okay? This is not a replacement for capitalism and trying to augment this is something totally different. This is about our lives. This is about improving our lot in life. So I want to make sure we understand this is not Calvinism. This is not one of these things that you get wrapped up in, okay? This right here is a new way of viewing participation in our society. Anyway, with that, I want to bring Pavlina back on. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
No, that's a really good point. We just have to start thinking in broader terms about what work is. Work is not going, just to the office and getting a job. And for many people, that's a good thing. And many people want that. So I see no reason why I should tell people what they should want. I find this a little bit in the basic income crowd that they say, look, the basic income is liberating. You don't have to go to your miserable job. Well, a lot of people are craving jobs, and it's not my business to tell them whether they should or not work. My job is to actually create the opportunities that they desire. So how about we create decent work? So, it's not our job to put people into miserable jobs in the private form. What work is to put a decent labor standard, and through a program that is not tied to private profit, but is tied to the public good. So we really expand the definition of what's useful work. We provide these other opportunities that the private sector is just not in the business of providing jobs for all. It's a very basic fact of life. And that is the function of the public sector, to guarantee that basic human right in a humane way. So we can again think of very very interesting models of providing work in the community, to enhance participation, involvement, to transform the communities and even the production process itself. Perhaps food doesn't have to be provided for profit, sustainable agriculture, right? Not necessarily strictly for profit. So that kind of job guarantee allows the possibilities for people to participate in their communities and transform their lives.
So I want to just say this. I have come to believe that, I started off thinking, wow, we can go ahead and provide people with the basic income. And you basically helped me understand, well, many people have, but just now, I think you said it very succinctly. Bottom line is that you can give us money, but childcare is still unaffordable. You can give us money, but these different aspects of life are still unaffordable. And I've read, I'm giving the Minskys a lot of credit here. I want to make sure they hear this. They wrote a great article the other day. Somebody was commenting about not so much a basic income guarantee, so much as a basic needs guarantee. And the way they wrote it out there was so powerful, and it addressed exactly what you're saying. Instead of just a basic income, I'm going to provide you these things that the capitalists of the world can raise the rates up to match your big and screw you up to begin with. And, and actually provide you with the necessities so that life is not an unnecessary struggle, so you can self-actualize. I mean, to me, that was, I just fell in love with it. That just sent me into a wonderful place.
Yeah. I think I had tweeted something saying, the basic income guarantee makes perfect sense if the grant is not cash, but in terms of real goods and services. And, what are you going to do with the enormous cost of healthcare if you get $10,000 a year guaranteed, no questions asked? You can't do anything with the basic income grant. And the thing is, this is the problem, that there's support on the right and the left for this program. But the very strong support on the right is to replace a lot of the welfare programs, to replace the welfare, the safety net essentially, with the basic income grant. And I have to say that some people on the left have conceded, the basic income could be more efficient. And I completely disagree. Like the way you solve a problem is you solve it directly. Your problem is expensive healthcare. You provide affordable healthcare. You don't provide cash. You provide affordable healthcare. If that means controlling drug prices, if that means busting the monopolies, if that means providing a public option, that's what you do. If the problem is inadequate childcare, you provide it. You don't provide a grant so that people can buy it on the market. You directly provide what is necessary.
It's like school vouchers.
Yes, exactly.
Same exact problem. And that's what, I'm sorry, that's what kills me, is the very people that would fight against school vouchers are many of the same people fighting for a basic income guarantee and don't realize that, once again, the wealthy will still go to the best schools ever. They'll have but they'll have a check in their hand to help offset that, while the poor will still be segregated in these bad schools because they can't afford to get there. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, no, can I just say something more about the safety net? I mean, really, it's with these public policies, you create policy space and constituencies. Basically, you create support for these programs. If I give you a basic income grant, I can always tell you, hey, why do you need, why do you need these food stamps if you have the basic income grant? You're done. I can't take away funding for public education if the job guarantee provides after-school activities or teacher assistance in the school. But if I give you a basic income grant, somebody can tell you, look, you don't need the public school system, go and buy it in the market. So if the job guarantee is providing, is providing childcare, you can take away Head Start program funds. Do you see? If you marry the job guarantee, the jobs are in these public spaces and tied to other public policies. If some of the job guarantee people are doing some basic work for the EPA, you just can't defund the EPA, right? The Environmental Protection Agency. Or if there are some very basic food inspector functions that the job guarantee could fulfill, you don't defund the Food and Drug Administration. So what I'm saying is that it is really an institution that can supplement all of these other areas of government that have been sorely defunded, and you just can't take them away. And they have been fought for, with blood and tears, if you will. So you don't want to replace the hard-fought welfare state with just a single grant.
So let me talk to you about something slightly off kilter, just so people can see the logic behind this. You can almost take the exact logic you're using and extrapolate it across many other areas. Like, one of the most difficult areas that we've talked about and was brought up during the campaign where Bernie Sanders was running was the idea of reparations. And many people were like, oh God, no. And I'll tell you, the pushback was, how do you define what that is? How do you define what that makes people whole, right? And in this particular case, you look around at all these different subject areas where people say, just throw money at it. The reality is they want the services. They need the services that come with it. So how do you make someone whole who has been in generational poverty, who has never had proper nutrition, who has never been able to go to the dentist? We never hear about universal dental care. You never hear about universal eye care. You only hear about universal medical care, but I would like to believe that's a more holistic view. But when you think about these things, providing these purposes, providing these needs, a lot of people come back and go, that's socialism. That's communism. So my thought is, so what, man? I don't care. We'll call it what you want. I call it thank you, thank you, thank you. How do you, I know that economics is largely apolitical, but you are one of the people that has a real bend for humanity, and it's one of the reasons why I like what you write and like what you say so much. Can you help us understand when you hear these sorts of things? You probably don't hear it at the top because people they probably just don't say that. But knowing full well that the average voter is trapped in a Fox News, CNN paradigm, how do you explain, hey, why don't we take care of each other? I mean, what's a good way to overcome that in your mind?
Well, look, there is no argument anyone can make that can justify somebody going without food. Like, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are, how how well you did in school, or whether you managed to pull yourself by your bootstraps. There is a fundamental sort of human responsibility to make sure that people do not die in this market-based economies, that we guarantee the basic necessities. So basically, you want to provide a floor to anyone. If those people who, for example, are very much wedded to the idea of economic freedom, that somehow the government interferes in our lives and limits our freedoms. We just have to explain that you don't really have freedom when you don't have a job. There's not much that you could do to determine your livelihood or your kid's livelihood if you don't have a job. And then we have to explain that the absence of jobs is not an individual failure. This is the big challenge. To explain that the absence of job opportunities is a simply macroeconomic systemic failure. It is more often than not beyond the individual's control. There are, of course, some individuals who lose their jobs because of their own doing, but the system is not designed to create employment and income for all. And so we just have to provide the floor. To talk about genuine freedoms, you just have to guarantee some very basic necessities to everyone so that they can then, figure out what they want to do with their lives. This is something else that I really want, I've started emphasizing recently. Most people don't realize they are paying for the unemployment, the cost of unemployment. Unemployment has absolutely enormous social and economic costs. Mortality rates go up, health costs go up, suicide rates go up. People lose income, permanent income over their lifetime. Even if they lose their job for a short period of time, there is a permanent loss over their lifetime income. But it's worse. It's not just the problem for the unemployed. Spouses suffer, children suffer. Children's performance in school is worse, their performance in the labor market is worse. Now, as a society, we are already paying the enormous costs of incarceration that is connected to economic crimes, the cost of increased health care. This is already paid for. So we can quite simply do it so much better. We can have a more humane approach to economics that guarantees people basic job at a basic decent income, and that then stems all of these vile effects that are connected to the problem of unemployment.
So let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that one of the other important factors here is that when you look at where we are as a nation, many people have given up on finding work at all. I mean, the numbers that are reported, the Krugmans of the world, et cetera, try to make us believe we're nearing full employment, which is really not true, is it? I mean, we're talking about neoliberalism has come through and wrecked what we have here and made it so that we're all fighting for table scraps. And so the people that have checked out would be checking in. What does that do to our productivity? What does that do to our ability to actually maximize our national output, if you will? If you want to just look at it from that standpoint, we're missing a lot of opportunities, aren't we?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, our friend Bill Mitchell in Australia did the calculations. At the peak of the crisis, every day we lost, or we gave up $10 billion of output because we were tolerating high levels of unemployment. Today, every day, we are foregoing $2 to $3 billion worth of output. So of course, there is, and we lack a whole bunch of goods and services that we can provide by simply mobilizing the unemployed. So look, one of the biggest problems, biggest myths that is perpetuated by the economic profession is that somehow there is this natural level of unemployment, that, we just have to, put up with this situation that simply not everyone can have a job. It's not possible. That the economy can create only so many jobs, and that's the most that we can achieve. So, you really have to think hard to accept this idea, this notion that there will be 17 million people out there who really want a well-paying job, a full-time, well-paying job, and somehow someone is telling you that that's just not possible, that they just can't have it. And so unemployment is a problem by design. You can simply design a better system. There's nothing natural about a certain level of unemployment. It is true that the private sector doesn't create full employment. That is natural, so-called natural for the private sector not to create full employment. But of course we have public policy, and there's nothing natural about public policy employment.
So, okay, when we're talking about, neoliberalism, I mean, for many of us, just to be fair, full disclosure, many of us were very against Hillary Clinton for a host of reasons, not the least of which is an understanding of what happened the last time a Clinton was in the White House with the budget surplus and bragging about deficit reduction and celebrating welfare reform, the personal responsibility, whatever act. There's so many things that came out of there that people, still hold on to dear life like it was good. And there's a real trade-off with the ignorance that came out of buying into the badge of the D and the badge of, the Clintonism. Regardless of your political identity, neoliberalism is a bipartisan disorder. And it has really, really infected us. And I see the job guarantee as the kryptonite for neoliberalism. I see it as the one surefire way to bring neoliberalism at least into check. And there's many other things we have to do once we get that basics taken care of. But can you talk to me a little bit about how neoliberalism has damaged our nation and our employment and our has pushed us to private credit a little bit? Can you discuss that?
Okay, so neoliberalism means many things to many people. Most people think, neoliberalism is all about sort of empowering the private sector and shrinking the government, balancing budgets, etc. It's not quite that. It is true that neoliberalism is very strongly about privatizing public services, but it is also a system of very large government, very large contracts to private firms, very large subsidies to certain sectors in the economy, very large military state. So it is not a small government kind of model. Neoliberalism is a very strong-armed government model, but largely serving very narrow interests, largely, a very, very highly financialized economy and financial interests. So it is also a model that uses balancing the budget as again, the myth of the need to balance the budget as a tool to basically privatize these welfare programs that we have enjoyed in the post-war era that have been very successful. So what is, of course, divorces the offer of employment from the profitability of employment. So in that sense, it does provide a check on the private sector. It kind of turns the tables a little bit and ask the private sector, look, you want workers, you better provide decent living conditions. And we know that this works pretty well because usually it's the public sector that sets the standard for pay, for benefits, etc. And then the private sector kind of matches those. So, private sector has no, real interest in increasing their labor costs. unless they are forced to do so. And the job guarantee essentially does that. It provides the basic that the private sector has to match. It also provides an alternative mode of provisioning. Like I said, whether it is childcare, whether it is community gardens, whether it is environmental care, if these things are provided through public service and not for profit, it also changes a little bit the power relationships between people and firms. So I don't have to go and buy the crappy food that is being sold to me on the market when I have a very nice CSA right next to my home, and I can get my produce there. So it does transform economic relations and power relations.
So one of the things we always see this, and I don't know when we've ever said this. I mean, our ability to print money is limitless. We can do that if we want to. I mean, there is a limit though where we hit, whether we have to start making trade-offs for inflation and so forth. Once we get to full employment, once we're either offset the leakages from being a net importer, et cetera. So can you talk to our people here a little bit, because they try to insert things. It's not their fault. This is just what they've heard elsewhere. They try and insert thoughts that they've heard elsewhere, like, hey, well, there's limits to this, aren't there? Well, of course, there's some limits. It's just about what you want, right? So can you talk a little bit about sectoral balances and how that kind of sets the bar when you're looking at an economy, how that plays into assessing the needs of an economy to keep it floating? It's not slapshot. It's not like you're just shooting a gun in the sky and hoping it lands. I mean, there's some pretty scientific ways of looking at the flows, are there not?
Yeah. So the first thing is that we have to debunk the myth that the government is running out of money and that we can't afford the programs that we need. The second thing is that when we talk about affordability, we need to think not in terms of financial resources, but real resources. Do we have the steel to rebuild our bridges? Do we have the qualified care workers to provide childcare and elderly care? Do we have the fish nets to do eel monitoring in the river? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking, not whether the government has money, because in our modern system, as we discussed, in a sovereign monetary system, the government is the monopoly issuer of the currency. They do not run out of paper currency or electronic digits or dollars, because they're the source of dollars. So this is a completely misdirected, it completely misdirects the focus of the public. People are so upset and obsessed and worried with the budget, or at least they're not really worried, but at least the politicians are creating that phobia and fear of the deficit. And it is the wrong place to look for the problem. We have the money. We need to ask whether we have the resources to provide for what we need. So in other words, we can issue all the social security checks we need to issue. The question is, what will the retirees buy with those social security checks? Will we have the goods and services to provide for both people who are working and who have retired? Have we created a strong enough economy to provide for all of their needs in terms of the real stuff that they want? And so in that sense, the conversation has to shift about what is genuine affordability. Steve, are you seeing my comment?
Yeah, I just did. That's what I was going to say is I can talk for a moment while you get your charger.
Please do. Yes, apologies.
Yeah. That's not a problem.
I'll be right with you.
No problem. Thanks. So folks, while Pavlina is getting her charger here real quickly, I just wanted to make some comments. You'll see some of the things that you've heard me talk about in the past. Federal taxes don't fund spending. The federal government is the issuer of the currency. Congress is the one that writes the bills and ultimately holds the purse strings. The Federal Reserve, for those people out there that fetishize the Fed, it handles monetary policy, okay? In other words, interest rates, driving a target interest rate, the Fed funds rate, et cetera. So we have fiscal policy controlled by Congress. We have monetary policy controlled by
Apologies.
the Fed.
I'm back.
So,
sorry about that.
That's okay. Give me 1 second. So if you think about the difference here, this is not an act of the Federal Reserve stepping in to give us a job guarantee. This requires an act of Congress. You got to know your government, your basic civvies, right? Congress is the one that controls the purse strings. So all the people with their fist in the air about the Fed, okay, maybe there's something to mend the Fed someday. Maybe, bottom line is elect a progressive and you'll get progressives nominated to the Board of Governors. But if you keep electing neoliberals, you're going to get neoliberals on with the Board of Governors and you're going to get neoliberal policies. So it really comes down to who you elect. And our Congress is who writes the bills. So let me bring Pavlina back in. Pavlina, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, there's so many moving parts.
No, it's all good.
So correct me. I don't know if you heard my little dissertation there, description between monetary policy and fiscal policy and putting the finger of blame where it belongs with Congress. People tend to focus. There's so many books written. I think I always keep this one handy just so I can make a mockery of people a little bit, just jokingly. But this book right here is like, the creature from Jekyll Isle. They act like I've never read it. Well, I've got it. I used to be one of those guys that read it too. Now it's just a, paperweight. But talk a little bit about the difference between fiscal policy, monetary policy, and possibly even, if you don't mind, discuss any relationship with the Fed that may or may not be known or unknown as it pertains to making us whole. Because I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding between what the two do. Can you talk about that?
All right. Yes. Okay. So first of all, the Treasury is the fiscal agent along with Congress, of the government, and they're responsible for spending and for taxation. So any and every program that the government undertakes, whether it is a military program, whether it is public investment, public education, whatever, subsidies, virtually every program goes through Congress, gets a vote, the Treasury then spends to meet those objectives. Monetary policy is policy exercised by the central bank, the Federal Reserve, and that is a policy that largely is connected to setting interest rates and lending. The Federal Reserve does not spend. They lend. They provide dollars or reserves, dollar reserves, to the banking system in order to clear payments. But this is an important distinction because all the dollars that end up in our pockets come from and spends these dollars, or if the government lends these dollars, right? So the spending comes from the fiscal authority, the lending comes from the monetary authority. Of course, if those dollars are lent, they have to be repaid, they have to be returned. But if the government spends, like if the fiscal authority spends, let's say, $100 million, and then taxes from us 80 million back, the difference is 20 million. And so I end up with, the private sector ends up with 20 million in savings, which is what we call the deficit, the government deficit. So the only authority that can spend and tax is the fiscal authority. So if they spend more than they tax back, they leave the difference in the pockets of the private sector. And this is something that just has to be understood by everyone in order to demystify government deficits. They are essential. They are, if the private sector wishes to save, then somebody has to dissave, and that is the public sector. If the government wishes to balance its budget every year, this means that they have to spend 100 million and tax 100 million, which means that the private sector every year will have zero savings. Now, we don't want that, right? We want people to save for rainy days, for retirement, for education, etc. We want people to be fiscally prudent and save, but that is only possible if the public sector dissaves and allows us to, to save in dollars. That's fiscal policy. So deficits are essential. They are just by definition, they have to be there if the private sector is to save. Not all deficits are created equal. They're not all equally good or bad. What we're discussing here today is how government spends. Has the government spent in a way to create the jobs, the incomes, the public resources that we all ask of the government? Monetary policy deals with sort of the management of the financial system. Very much the large responsibility of the monetary authority is to regulate the financial system and financial instruments, which is something they do not do. What they largely are focusing on, playing around with interest rates in hope that the private sector will borrow to spend and to boost the economy. So it's credit driven. It's based on private sector debt and credit.
So I got to ask this question because Ellis brought it up last night when he was describing the crux of neoliberalism. He said the goal was to enact public policy through private centers of debt, basically going into debt through the means you're talking about. Like that Milton Friedman basically, pushed us into this direction of monetary policy versus fiscal policy. So what I want to know from you, and I think that some of our guests really want to understand as well, when we talk about income inequality and we talk about the job guarantee big and all that stuff, what is it really that started this income inequality? Because you can see there was a point in time where the income inequality was there, but it wasn't that bad. And then all of a sudden it just went crazy right through the roof. What does MMT do, and how does MMT bring income inequality back? When I say MMT, I don't mean MMT. I mean the prescriptions that we're putting to MMT. How do we bring that back into line here? Can you talk about that?
Yep. All right. So first, I want to say that income inequality seems to be the norm for a market economy. The one period where there was compression and low income inequality was right after the few decades after the Second World War, and sort of during the golden age of the American economy. That was the one time that we had a much more equitable income distribution. Before, in the roaring 20s and earlier, there was very large income inequality, and we are returning back to those levels. So there are different types of income inequality, and so we can talk about income inequality just between different income groups. So you take households and then divide them up, and then you say, the richest 1% of households versus the poorest 99% of households. And, what we're seeing is that since the 70s and the 80s, when the economy grows, virtually all of that growth today goes to the very, very wealthy households, meaning that their incomes are rising. But the real incomes, the average real incomes of the bottom 90 or 99% haven't really budged in the last 2 decades. So in real terms, the vast majority of Americans are not doing well. So what do? How do you fix income inequality? I mean, there are 2 ways. One way is just to allow the economy to do what it's doing right now. Currently the economy doesn't create a lot of jobs. It doesn't create a lot of good jobs. And certainly we don't see robust job growth. So we take the system as it is, and we tax the wealthy and we redistribute to the poor. That's one way to change income inequality. It's not a particularly good way to do it necessarily, because you have a public sector, you have a government sector that doesn't need to tax from the rich to give to the poor, right? The government is the source of the dollar. So in my view, it's incumbent on the government to change the way income is created in the economy, to change the labor relations, essentially, to favor strong employment and generation of income through very strong and full employment. So you transform the way income is generated by basically guaranteeing a job to anyone and everyone, which would mean that those at the bottom of the income distribution, automatically their incomes will go up. So if you notice how the labor market works, if you have education and you're a high-wage worker, you almost never suffer from unemployment or very short spells of unemployment. If you're at the bottom of the income distribution, poorer, maybe low skill, low education, you are the first person who's fired and the last person who is hired. So you have these, they have really hard time getting back in the labor market, building a career track, etc. And you also experience long spells of unemployment. So the job guarantee just is, because it provides a base floor, it captures those people that are having the most difficulty getting jobs and building their incomes. So basically, you fix income inequality by raising the bottom. You raise the floor. Now, that's not going to do the job because you still may have a lot of income that accumulates at the top. But at a minimum, you have raised the floor very rapidly and to a level below which no one will fall. Now, if you believe that the top 1% are earning far too much income and they are consuming many of the resources that others can be consuming, then you might want to tax the rich, right? So that they don't have enough income or so that they can donate their income to public uses and public purposes, right? So the taxing function at the top can again improve income distribution, but you do it not because you need the money. You do it because there may be a misallocation of resources, of economic resources.
So that's the, we're up against the hour, and I mean, I'm not on a network, so I don't have a time limit, but I am respective of your time. The last thing I guess I really want to hit on hard is the idea that, somehow or another, when we talk about, wealth and income inequality, that somehow or another the people are lazy, that somehow or another, it's just bad choices and so forth. This economy is built to punish people. It really is. So one of the things that we've looked at is we know we can't get anything done in a progressive bubble. We've got to find a way to branch across the divide and find a way to sell these talking points to quote unquote Republicans and other people that maybe have a different set of sensibilities that might define the public purpose differently than progressives would. My thought is that MMT is the perfect tool to bridge the divide because, number one, taxes don't technically fund spending. It's not like the government needs our tax dollars to pay for things. So there is an opportunity here to bridge a divide. At least that's how I see it. Can you close on that and just explain in your own words how we can reach across aisles and reach across divides to make macroeconomic reality a place that we can build from?
Look, you cannot tell who is working hard and who is not working hard unless you have guaranteed opportunities to everyone. If the opportunities are not there, we cannot tell who is doing the right thing to succeed in life. This is a game of musical chairs. If you have 9 chairs and 10 people, one person will be without a chair. So you can do whatever you can teach them work discipline and, better life choices. But at the end of the day, if there isn't a chair for that one person, they cannot sit. And it's the same with employment. Unless we guarantee employment for all, we really cannot figure out who has advanced because of merit, who has advanced because they've gotten better education. We need to be able to guarantee those opportunities so that then people can make the choices that they wish to make with their lives on the right terms. And so the job guarantee is a policy that should bridge the divide between left and right, in the sense that we want to create something useful for the society. We want to be able to transform those plagued communities that suffer from so much, public squalor, unemployment, crime, etc. At the same time, we provide the kinds of goods and services that they need. And more importantly, we allow for people to participate in that process. Currently, very many people are left outside of economic life. They are not given a window of opportunity to step in and to participate in their own self-determination and their own livelihood in their community. So we just have to structure the system, the economy, in such a way to provide those opportunities for all.
Well, look, we're at the hour, and I could go on and on with you. I really love talking. This warms my heart more than anything. When I'm done with this, I'm gonna go up and run and tell my fiance, "Do you know who I just talked to?"
You're very good.
So much from me.
I enjoyed it. I hope your audience enjoyed it. I'm happy to talk again.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I just want to let you know that if there's any kind of resources that you can point them to close us out, just anywhere that you think, and we'll put these, we always give links to whatever we say. We never just say things. We always try to provide backup to what we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I work at Bard College. I'm a professor at Bard College, and I work at the Levy Economics Institute, where we have advocated the employer of last resort for, it was part of Minsky's life's work. And so if you're interested in reading a little more academic stuff, but also some of our policy proposals, like what might it look like? How would we design a job guarantee? Like what would it, for the United States? I saw some comments here. People were asking, has this program been tried elsewhere? And you can go on my own website. It's my name, Pavlina-Tcherneva.com. I have a lot there on comparisons. Also, the Levy Economics Institute has a lot of papers on how the job guarantee has worked outside of the United States. And also, follow the blog New Economic Perspectives if you have not yet, as well as Bill Mitchell's work, who also is doing it at the buffer stock employment model. That's the other name for the job guarantee. So lots of resources, and good luck.
Thank you. Okay, and trust me when I say this, I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm putting our people on the spot, and I'm going to avail you to this. We want to have a march for economic inequality on tax day. Folks, we want to do something, whether we're able to get all these stars and out there speaking with us or not. We want to be out there because this is so important. People are dying every day that we don't take care of this. There's suicides for unemployment. The catastrophic fallout from us not taking care of our own is so severe. Like, this drives me every single day of my life. And we're going to go out in DC and we're going to raise our fist in the air and we're going to tell them, hey, it's time you serve the public purpose. You're a public servant. You're not our rulers. You're our servants. Serve us now. So anyway.
Best of luck. Absolutely. If I can make one more plug, the Modern Money Network is having an event this Thursday. So just Google Modern Money Network, and the session is called Beyond Despair. And we have some really fantastic speakers, but my focus is going to be exactly on the aspect of unemployment is deadly in a literal sense. And we need to think about this very hard and think about how to address these public health problems with unemployment.
Thank you so much, Pavlina. This was wonderful. Folks, thank you for joining us. With that, I'm Steve Grummine. This is Pavlina Tcherneva. So long, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
And